guys so much for coming to my adaptive costume design panel. First, I'm going to take you through some examples of adaptive costume design and adaptive fashion design in industry. So this is where you can buy adaptive fashion for yourself if you would like, companies that are doing adaptive costume design, and then I'm going to go through the demo and show you the stuff that I've done personally for me. But first, who am I anyways? Who am I to speak on such a topic? I'm Colleen, and I've been running the Colleen Cosplay YouTube channel since 2018. I've been cosplaying over 10 years, and I mostly do tutorial content, so I teach how to make costumes like the one I'm wearing now. I also teach how to make adaptive costumes. Just a little bit about me, so you kind of know like my perspective, how I'm approaching these issues. This is me in all those pictures. So I was not disabled growing up. I was able-bodied. I even cosplayed as an able-bodied passing person. So I had like the experience of what cons are like when you're able-bodied. And I also have the experience of what it's like when you're disabled. So I've used knee braces, I've used crutches, I have used wheelchair, I've had to adapt and change costumes for each stage of that. I do have hypermobile syndrome and osteoarthritis, so that is going to be mostly joint pain, instability, subluxation. I'm also an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I will be like moving my legs a little. That's not like a concerning thing. Most wheelchair users are ambulatory. I can stand and walk for a short period of time, just not it's significant enough to really do anything important. So I use the wheelchair. So that's kind of how I'm approaching the things we're going to be talking about today is alterations for joint pain, hypermobility. How can I get dressed without subluxing my shoulders? That's what I really want to know. It's great when you can get dressed and undressed independently. And also wheelchair use. So making sure that my costumes are not eaten by my wheelchair, which if you've never had that experience, it is terrifying when you're like rolling through con and you kind of feel the tug and you're like, oh no. So making sure everything's safe, and then mobility and decorations. I'm mostly focusing on the wheelchair because that's what I use now, but I did bring a forearm crutch to show you that as well from some stuff I did in the past. Adaptive fashion is clothing designed to make it accessible for disabled people and aging populations to dress themselves independently, wear their clothes comfortably, and work with medical equipment as needed, all while still being fashionable. And what I like about this definition is, you know, I've talked like you want to be able to dress independently. You want to be able to like wear the thing, but you want to feel good too. Disabled people also deserve to like feel like they look good and feel confident in their clothes and wear the styles that they like. So that is the other half of the adaptive fashion movement is we don't want to just be wearing like hospital gowns every day. You know, we want to have cool, fun, trendy clothes. We want to be wearing stuff that you see on New York Fashion Week. Like we want to be cool too and have that confidence that comes with wearing clothes that make you feel happy. I'm going to take you through some examples of adaptive fashion that exist from maybe stores you've even heard of before that have adaptive lines. Tommy Hilfiger has that's the Velcro jeans in the corner. They also have these shirts with the magnets instead of buttons if hand mobility makes buttons hard. Victoria's Secret, they have adaptive underwear, so that's switching out the clasps for things that are easier for hand mobility. And then Zappos Adaptive, they have the cool shoes that zip on the side, so it's easier to get your shoes on and off. So these are brands that you've maybe even heard of. Maybe you've heard of JCPenney before or Kohl's. They have adaptive fashion lines, so lines sold that are specifically for disabled people to help. So a few more examples, we have, again, Velcro closures instead of buttons. Buttons can be difficult. From Kohl's, we also have this dress with an opening so you can access medical equipment if you have like any sort of like feeding tube or thing you need to access in the dress. And then Aerie also has an adaptive underwear line so that you can more easily get dressed by yourself. So even like the big stores are doing this. This is a pretty serious movement, but I feel like it hasn't taken a hold of the general population as much yet. And what about places that specialize in adaptive design, right? Like, do we really all have to shop at big box stores? This is one of the ones I like. This is Lady Finds. I'm gonna have all the websites on the slides if you would like to look them up, maybe do a little bit of shopping for yourself. I'm a pink pastel girly, and they have just some of the cutest outfits. You know, they have a jacket which has an opening for a port. If you have a port and needed to access it, they have sensory-friendly clothing. They were also in New York Fashion Week. So this is stuff that has been on the runway at New York Fashion Week as an adaptive brand. It's something people are talking about, people are thinking about, because people want to see it. Another example, Faduma Clothing. They do a lot of kind of like adaptive dresses, get yourself into a bit more easier, have a bit more room. Again, adaptive jackets. You're gonna see a lot of like fake buttons. This presentation, buttons are a difficult one. And then IZ Adaptive, I feel like they have the largest like array of options. Men's, women's, non-gendered clothing. They have a lot of just like regular people clothes. Like if you want a button shirt and jeans and shoes, they got it. They just have a huge amount of clothing available. Pretty much anything you could think that you want. Adaptive, they've probably done it and they do a pretty good job. If you're into sewing, maybe you like to sew costumes or sew outfits, and you'd like to sew an adaptive design, Simplicity's got you there. They have actually released, it's just this last year, they released these patterns so you can sew adaptive clothing yourself. And this is in collaboration with the company Sewn Adaptive, and they do costumes for the LA Rollettes, which is a wheelchair dance group that is located in LA. So they have a lot of experience. They have worked with disabled people over and over and over, and now they're working with Simplicity to bring it to us in patterns. And I love this for patterns because then you can also make some adaptations yourself. You know, I personally don't like putting magnets on my costume because I'm rolling around in a big thing of metal, and like the magnets could stick to this, which is also an uncomfortable feeling. So maybe I'm like, I would rather have zipper closures, or maybe I'd rather have buttons and use an adaptive tool to get them on. So I just love how this gives you so much more choices to customize it yourself. I also want to talk about some nonprofit organizations that are making a lot of headway in adaptive fashion design. So Open Style Lab, they're doing great work. They run programs teaching designers how do you make adaptive fashion for a lot of different disabilities. That's actually kind of my gateway into adaptive design, is I saw the work they were doing and how they were adapting to all sorts of even disabilities you wouldn't really think of, right? Because disability isn't just sitting in a wheelchair. Like, disability can look like anything. And that's why a lot of times adaptive fashion, the solutions are as unique as the people who need them. And so they do great work if you want to see more behind the fashion design curtain. Runway of Dreams, it's not fashion design, but I still included them. They put disabled models on runways for fashion shows to give more visibility and representation to disabled people. Adaptive fashion's great, we all love that, but we're at FanExpo, and we like to wear costumes here. What about adaptive costumes specifically? So I have a few more examples of that as well. It is definitely a newer thing emerging. So first I want to talk about Disney. This is only kids costumes at the moment, but they have a whole adaptive line at Disney, mostly for Halloween costumes. I want to say it's only been the last few years I've seen so many kids Halloween adaptive costumes. This is like a great thing if you have any kids, you want to take trick-or-treating and they need a little bit more help. Looking at the costume, you might be like, that just looks like a costume. It doesn't even look adaptive. So the things that it has, obviously like a bit of a shorter cape, also opening at the front for easy, again, medical access if you have any medical equipment that you need to access, elastic waistband so it's more comfortable, self-stick fabric closures, just means like Velcro. They also do the cute little wheelchair costumes. I love these. So they have a number of costumes that you can put on your wheelchair. But if you're like, okay, I have a kid, I want to take him trick-or-treating, and I want to choose something that's not owned by Disney. We also have Ruby's Costume Company, and these costumes have a lot of the same accessibility features, openings to get medical supplies, or they have self-stick closures in the back, or they're just made with like a little bit more room so you can sit in the wheelchair more comfortably. So they are also doing that. Let's also talk about some nonprofits. So one of my favorites is Magic Wheelchair. I think they were here at Rose City Comic Con. Maybe you guys saw them? Yeah, okay.
They're here now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, are they?
Yeah, there's an artist gallery.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go say hello. So,
over by the autograph.
oh, I didn't even know they were here. Wow, okay, so Magic Wheelchair, they do really good work. So they're a nonprofit organization, and they build these like super cool wheelchair costumes for disabled kiddos, free of charge. And they have some really impressive builds. They have a whole team of people making these things, and they'll build entire structures around the wheelchair. It's a really cool experience for the kids. So we have Walkin' and Rollin', which is very similar. They create wheelchair costumes for disabled kids. They also do walker costumes. The kids using a walker, and they also create those cool costumes free of charge. And then finally, Capes for a Cause, very similar. They're a nonprofit organization. They're giving wheelchair costumes to kids. So all of those are really good. I love to see the options for kids. I love for kids to be able to trick or treat like everyone else. It kind of brings up the question, what about us adults? And what about things like cosplay contests or conventions? Like, can we still have cool adaptive costumes for that? Well, unfortunately, you kind of are entering the area of you need to make it yourself or commission someone to make it for you. As far as I know, there is no like mass manufactured adaptive costumes for adults. From my knowledge, like I have not found any. So that kind of comes down to like you need to get creative on your own or have someone to do commission work for you to get creative. So I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I've made myself to get creative. Make it adapt, make it work for myself as an adult who wants an adaptive costume. Everything I'm going to be playing with on stage here, there are tutorials on my YouTube channel, Colleen Cosplay. If you're like, oh, I really wish I knew how that was made, I have tutorials up there. So first, what I want to talk about is this coat I have on the floor. So this is a design based off of Carmen Sandiego, and I wore it for the Her Universe Fashion Show in 2021. If you don't know what that is, it's a show held at San Diego Comic-Con. It's a bit of a bigger con, so it's a pretty cool show that they run there. And I designed this coat to be adaptive. If everything goes to plan, I may even be able to put this on while sitting in the wheelchair with one hand holding the microphone, is the idea. So I designed this so that it could be put on while I'm sitting and that it wouldn't strain my shoulders and that it could just slide right on like this. The way I did it is I wanted to still kind of give it the look of like a normal coat, because that's what she wears. Carmen Sandiego has that like iconic red coat. So I wanted to have the zipper in the front, and this is a lie. This is like fully a lie. It does not, it doesn't zip. It connects at the side here for me to get in. I've never worn this over a Supergirl costume before. If I'm going to be honest, I don't usually wear it on top of Supergirl. So that is the design that I did. Also a fake belt. This is also a lie. Triangles don't make good belt buckles. That's why it's fake. You can tell it's fake. When a lot of people are making their costumes, or even just clothes, like, do you ever think what it looks like when you're sitting down? Do you ever think if you can sit in it? Like the amount of times I've gone, do you ever, like, have you ever gone to a cosplay contest and you're backstage and someone comes in with a costume, it's like, okay, everybody sit down to get your number, and then there's a few people looking around to like, sit down? So that was another consideration. It's like I need to be able to sit down and stand up, and I need it to look good both ways if possible. So that's another consideration for wheelchair use. Another thing I want to talk about is adaptive tools. So as I said, like I'm not really a big fan of magnets, but I do have an adaptive tool, and how this works is there are all sorts of them. There are adaptive tools for basically anything you can think of. I have them for opening jars, I have them for cutting fabric, there are little tools out there for basically anything. So the way this works, it is one end that hooks onto zippers. So if you have trouble grasping zippers, but if you are able to hook this on, assuming the zipper I had was real and not fake, you can grab this handle that's like kind of rubbery and pull. So if you have trouble grasping that little, I don't know what it's called, the little thing on the zipper, you can grab this. And if this was real, it would work. For the button, it's a little bit harder. You can kind of see in the picture, it shows it a little bit better. But it'll kind of like hook onto your button, and then you take it through the buttonhole and you pull it and it comes through. So a lot of times I would prefer to use something like an adaptive tool than mess around with Velcro magnets. Also, like the way wig hair gets caught in Velcro, can we talk about that? That is also an issue. Like there are options, and since if you're doing adaptive costume design for adults, you're gonna be doing it custom. Make it something that works for you. Make it your unique solution. Here is some test footage. What does it look like when I have a costume that isn't adaptive? That's the question. What does it look like? You're about to see my wheelchair take a big old bite out of that dress. Accessibility, It's always gonna be more important than accuracy. I hear so many people being like, this character has a long dress, so I'm gonna have a long dress and my wheelchair is gonna eat it. You know, we're gonna have a situation, like, please don't do that. Please no, please make it safe for you, even if it's not accurate. Please make costumes that aren't gonna hurt you. Like, even outside of disability, don't make costumes that hurt you. This is about having fun. Please don't hurt yourself over this. That pink dress, unfortunately, got nibbled on a little bit by my wheelchair. What are some better options? So I like to just bring the skirts in, make them narrower, and also make them shorter, so that they're not in the way. With shorter skirts, I'll also make them longer. A skirt that looks a bit short, when you sit down in a wheelchair, it looks even shorter. So I have some examples that say good under them. That's another Carmen Sandiego build that I made more fitted. And then the She-Ra is a purchased dress that just has, like, that is a good and safe fit. Nothing's gonna get caught on that dress. We are safe to take it to a con, and the pink one never went to a con. If it does not pass the test, either I have to fix it or it does not come here, because I'm not gonna deal with a dress caught in wheels at something like a con like FanExpo, you know? Gonna finally take off this super heavy, warm, this is warm. Okay, comes off just like that. Okay, so capes. The Supergirl on the end, that was when I was using crutches, and I was really obsessed with, like, really big capes. Oh, really big capes, really big dresses, really impressive. Everyone's gonna be like, oh man, she looks so good at the con. I was so proud of that costume. I started using a wheelchair, and I was like, this isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work anymore, and I sold that costume. It's gone. Goodbye, rest in peace, original Supergirl. And I had to remake it for wheelchair use. But this is the cape I have now. And I have a few different safety features I've put into it. First of all, you can kind of see in the picture, I wear a harness underneath so that this isn't pulling around my neck. It's pulling from my shoulders. Second, like with the dress, I've shaped this so it shouldn't get caught in the wheelchair. Okay, so it's just snap closures. And if this is done correctly, and I put this out of the way, ideally, this will not catch in my wheelchair. I have to confess something to you. I have a new wheelchair now that I did when I made this. This wheelchair is a bit narrower, so this demo might be a little bit too real for me. I'm not actually sure if this will work. I'm not certain if this will be an issue or not. You want to make sure the cape is not rolling, you're not rolling over it, right? And you don't want to just try just sitting, because we do more things than just, like, sit completely straight up, right? So what if I need to lean back and ask Kyra to give me some fruit snacks? Okay, is it stuck in the wheels yet?
No.
Yay! What if I need to bend down and pick up my fruit snacks off the floor? Okay, that seems to be fine. Now the tricky part, like, that would usually be okay. The tricky part is I also do wheelchair dance, which means I'm doing things like this. I usually go both sides, and then if I can, without destroying everything here, I usually do a few spins too. Those are all things you want to check before you take this to a con. Well, maybe you're not dancing. If you're going to be dancing, check that you can dance in it. But otherwise, like, those are things you want to be checking. A lot of times it's just like, oh, I'm sitting and it's fine. It's like, okay, well, if you do anything else at the con, which you probably will, you might have an issue. Also, make sure you can go to the bathroom in your costumes, please. With whatever mobility aid you use at cons, even though I use, like, crutches at home, I want to make sure I can get from a wheelchair to the bathroom, go to the bathroom in my costume, because I won't go into details, but it's really, really bad when you're at a con and you need to go to the bathroom and you realize you can't. Okay, let's also talk about hair. So you kind of saw also when I was twirling around that my hair wasn't getting caught in the wheels. So make it shorter so it doesn't get in the wheels. I definitely also plan, like, if I'm, like, leaning, that it's not getting between my hand and the wheel. Like, I would have to, I'm not even sure if I can. I would have to be like this to actually get my hair caught in the wheel. So short enough that anything that you would actually be doing is not gonna get caught in the wheel. And that is my biggest suggestion. And look at what this girl is wearing. Her hair is on the floor. Why is her hair on the floor? And her wings are like the size of her body. I wouldn't even recommend someone who isn't using a wheelchair to do this. Like, you don't want your hair on the floor. So there's the Queen Serenity that I altered. And I did commission the wig. As I said, if you're not a sewing person, you can always commission someone. Just be very specific about what you need for your disability, because most commissioners, they don't know. You need to be in charge of like, hey, I use a wheelchair, I'm gonna need the cape to be like 2 inches shorter, I'm gonna need the wig to be shorter, and be very specific. I have one more example of wigs. I've had some people be like, I have to have a long wig. I have to have a long wig because I'm cosplaying Miku. And there's one other option, though I don't recommend it, and that is basically turning your wig into a prop that attaches to your head. If it is a thick structure, and it's not like separate hairs, if it's like a thick thing, it's not gonna get caught between your hand, right? Like, I'm not gonna have that huge pigtail get caught between my hand. So you can just make it a solid structure. It's really more of a helmet than hair at that point. But if you're really set on like, I have to have a long wig, then you can make it into a giant helmet. So, because what really gets you is the wispy parts of the hairs at the end catching in the spokes. Okay, we already talked about cosplay contests a little bit, but just a little bit more detail, explaining what you did and being clear why you changed it, what problem solving went in. So, for example, I actually competed this costume a while ago, and I told them, like, when I made this costume, I said, okay, so I designed the cape so it's attached to my chest, so if it gets caught in something like an elevator or like another costume, like who knows, people walking around here with swords, what do I do? First of all, it's pulling at my chest so I will not be strangled to death by a cape, which is good, and my mold has told me so. Second, these have snaps. So, if it is stuck, I am going to escape very speedily so I do not meet my demise like so many other heroes before me. I'm safe. I told that to the judges, and they were like, oh, that's clever. That's clever, actually. I can tell you did some problem solving, you did some patterning, you made it work. Like, as someone who has judged before, I would consider that more than someone who's like, so I got a cape pattern from the store and I copied it exactly as it is and I'm wearing it exactly as the pattern, and I didn't do any self-drafting or any testing, I'm just wearing it. I actually think that adaptive costume design, when explained appropriately in pre-judging, can actually, help. It's actually like a good thing because it shows problem solving, and that's what judges are looking for. And then I also talked about, my time at the fashion show, and this is the comment I got on how I adapted the coat, not only in a garment that is shown standing, but also in a garment that is shown sitting. A lot of designers don't really think about what their garment is going to look like when somebody is actually in a seated position, and that's from the Hot Topic SVP of Merchandise and Marketing. I love the discreet buttons, so the front zipper, how she says it doesn't open, it actually opens on the side to get in and out, and that's from the 2019 Her Universe Audience winner. I'm not making this up. Like, if you go to a con and you show and you explain how you did this, it's a good thing. Like, you can do cosplay contests if you're disabled. Like, you can do it. I want to see you guys in cosplay contests. Like, come be there with me backstage. I will hype you up. Let's do contests together. The other really fun thing about adaptive costume design is I get to make little costumes for my mobility aids. So here's a few examples. I have a bunch of stuff on the floor too to show you. We're going to talk about that, but first, industry examples. If you're not a crafty person, these are things you can buy. Izzy Wheels is an example. I have one of their wheels, very nice. If you just want wheel covers, they have a few different sizes. They have a lot of different patterns. They've also collaborated with Disney and with Wicked. If you want like a wheel cover with, the Wicked faces on it, like that you can buy that. That's the thing you can buy. Cool crutches are the pink crutches I have inside. They're great. Whatever you want, they can do. They also do completely custom. If you want pictures of your dog's face up and down your crutch, they can make that for you. You can have that. I've seen it. It's pretty cool. And then Neo Walk Sticks just has a whole bunch of walking sticks that are customizable. They look really cool. Once again, simplicity patterns. They have a whole bunch of like bags and holders and covers for wheelchairs, walkers, crutches. They have a whole line if you want to sew them yourself. iWheel USA, they also have wheel covers and have pushroom covers. So that just goes over the pushroom here. And then Aerie has ostomy bag covers too. So there are a few options if you just want to buy one for yourself. But if you want to make one, I'd love to talk to you about it. With my costumes, like what are things I consider? In my opinion, if your costume or your mobility aid decoration disables you further, that is not a good choice. That's not it. You don't want something that makes it harder for you to move. I have so many people be like, why don't you wear a mermaid tail? And I'm like, well, because I'm ambulatory and like, I can't do this if I'm wearing a mermaid tail. For every person, it's going to be different, but I would definitely recommend something that does not take away the mobility you do have. So again, considering activity and movement, so kind of what we talked about with like the costumes, the capes and stuff. Venue restrictions is things like, can you fit in the elevator? Can you fit through the doors? You know, a lot of people with the big I don't know if you see the people with the really big costumes like wings, they go to a door and you know what they do? They turn sideways and they walk sideways. Okay, I've seen some really big, I'm not pointing at anyone, I've seen some really big wing swings. You know how they get through doors? They turn sideways and they walk sideways. How do you walk sideways in a wheelchair? I can't. I have to consider that I need it to fit the door width going forward. I can't turn sideways and crab walk through. We've talked about how easy you can dress and undress yourself. How easy can you dress and undress your wheelchair is also an important question. Let's start with crutch covers. Blast from my past. Oh, no. Come on, please.
Do you need a hand?
Yeah, Kira, I'm calling in an assist.
We need a superhero to save your day.
Can you also put the wings over here too? Yeah. I've created my own demise, foiled by my own mess I left on the stage. Before I used the wheelchair a lot, I used forearm crutches. This is one of them. This is just like a very basic, cheap forearm crutch. One of the things I like to do was just cover the top. This is easy. This is basically just like a sock for a crutch. I do the like saran wrap duct tape pattern that so many cosplayers use, but on a crutch. And I patterned this out. I know each crutch has like a different cuff. It just goes like this onto the crutch, and you just slide it on. And your crutch has a costume. These were actually my Supergirl covers for that first Supergirl costume that unfortunately had to be retired because the cape was too big. And as far as like closing it on the back, my crutch does this thing. This is so that like you can rest your arm on it. Like sometimes when I'm waiting, I like to like rest on here instead of resting here. So the way I connect it on the back is I gave it a little crutch corset. It has a little corset that I laced up with elastic and elastic stretches so that it can stretch as I move it. But if you have a crutch that isn't like, stationary, it doesn't have this movement, you could use something else. The other thing, I have noodle arms, like that's not like the most helpful mobility aid function. So I just have a normal hair tie and I put it across the front so that I can, sometimes you need to like grab things with your hands, a concept, so then I can like grab something, hand it off, my fruit snacks, hand them to Kira. I've done quite a few different designs. I did the Halloween ones with little bats. Also for the rest of the crutch, I've used like tape, stickers, sequins, as long as you can make sure it comes off. I have one pair of crutches that is just eternally sticky. It's been 5 years, they're still sticky to this day. Making sure you can get it off. I've also seen some people like make a tube of fabric and just make a little tube that goes along the length of the crutch. So there's a few options there. It's just not quite the surface area to decorate like a wheelchair is. So let's talk wheel covers. These are some of my favorites. Wheel covers, I love anything that that's a circle. I'm like, I could put that on a wheelchair. Sorry, I'm gonna have to get on the ground to like do this better. It's actually kind of hard for me to like put them on while I'm sitting in the chair. Here's one of the fabric wheel covers. And the way that I do it is I have little tabs with little snaps. You can kind of see the snaps in the back. And the way it connects on the wheelchair is this is the push rim, this is the wheel. There are connections. You can kind of see my hand stopping. I like to connect to those connections. There are quite a few wheel covers that will connect to the spokes, but I found that like if it's not a perfect fit, they can kind of slide a little bit up and down the spoke. It's not as solid of a connection to me, and like I said before, I do dance. I want the solidest connection that's possible. So this will, let me put the brakes on so this doesn't roll away from me. So this will go around the cover like this, and it just snaps to the back. Go all the way around, you have a pumpkin attached to your wheel. The only like downside of wheel covers in general is if you need to pump up the wheels. I have air-filled wheels. If you need to pump up the wheels, you kind of have to take them off usually. The other thing is this wheelchair has pop-off wheels, which means I can take the whole wheel off. Probably not right now because I only have one hand and I'm sitting on the floor. So if you need to pop off the wheels to load them into a car or something, you also have to usually take the covers off for that. But other than that, I leave the pumpkin ones on for the entire month of October. I get so many, I take these to the grocery store, and I get so many compliments at the grocery store about my pumpkin wheels. What if you're like, man, I really would like to do wheel covers. I don't want to buy them, I want to make them, but I just don't like sewing, which I can't relate. I love sewing, but I get it. But what if you could make them out of foam? So these are my Captain America wheels, which I made out of foam so I could throw them. Like Captain America throws them. That was the plan. So I'm again utilizing the push rim connections, these connections here, but I just made a little notch in the foam. And so with these, they just pop into the wheel and they lock in where these connection pieces are. And you can roll away. And then my favorite thing to do was while I'm sitting in the wheelchair, I would pop it out at the front, grab it, and I would throw it across the yard for videos, and the people loved it. But what about other things than the wheels? I mean, we got a lot of wheelchair to work with here, right? We don't need to just talk about wheels. We have a lot to work with here. Wings, props, and accessories. These are fairy wings from Wings Club, so I can be a fairy. These go onto the back, which currently has an Eda bag, but I think we can make it work. So the way that I do this is I create a harness out of elastic. So any sort of stretchy fabric that you can stretch around the back of the chair, I use that in this kind of harness shape. And then this will just slide on top and fit over the back of the wheelchair. And these are made out of wire, so they can kind of bend. You can see how they're kind of bending back around so that I don't run into people at the con with my wings. I can fit through the doors. The other thing is these wings kind of look like outrageously tall. It looks like you took the wings and you know how in Word you can grab it and lengthen. That's what it looks like that happened. But there's a reason for that. That was on purpose. Let me put the brakes on so I don't roll away. So the thing with fairy wings is they usually attach between the shoulder blades. That's usually how fairies work, right? But you can see where the wheelchair's wings are. It's like the bottom of my spine is where it attaches. So I've elongated the wings so that from the front, you have a bit of the illusion of fairy wings. You can still see them a bit from the front. Because with some of my older ones, one of the ones on there is one of my first attempts. I realized you just couldn't see the wings from the front, and I was doing these awkward back photos just so you could see them at all. So now I kind of elongate them so it gives the illusion they might be coming more out of my back than the bottom of my spine. I used the same method, elastic straps, to make holders for handheld props, because I like to use my hands to walk by using my wheelchair. When you have handheld props, that gets a bit harder. So I have harnesses that also hold the props on the back. You can put bows on the back. You can put a butt on the back of your wheelchair. So I turned a pair of shorts into a bag and I just attached it on the back, and it is just it's a butt on the back of my wheelchair. Lots of different options. But with that, are there any questions? Well, we will wrap it up here. Thank you so much.